Time for another bite-sized edition of One Soccer Today as we go coast to coast, reviewing, recapping, and previewing the 11. There's 11 of them. MLS Canadian professional clubs in the country. MLS, we're getting to you. We're staying in the Canadian Premier League for now, and we're going in order of the table as we tape these. So that means we've done 3. Today is 4, and that brings us to York United. A season of change for the club, getting new ownership in. The Pascal brothers running the show, immediately putting their mark, fairly quickly departing ways or splitting paths with Martin Nash, bringing in Benjamin Mora, who stayed for about 6 months and then moved on to a new project. Mario Eustachio, he's been on the program. He will be leading the Nine Stripes into the 2025 calendar year. We know that Jordan Wilson is, of course, the former York United man, so he's going to drive the bus for us today, which means I'm going to give him the first word here. Big step forward, of course, with the playoff appearance, the record win at home, some breakthrough players, but ultimately still just a little bit short, though they did give Atletico Ottawa quite a match that went to pens. What is your biggest storyline, Jordan Wilson, from the 2024 season?
Shola!
Slam dunk.
Has to be.
Me the money!
I knew if I yelled, the wheels is going to be right there. Shout out to my boy.
Shola me the money!
I knew wheels were going to be right. I knew Ollie was going to look at me like, why is he screaming? And wheels is going to be right there screaming, oh, I love you, buddy. It has to be Shola because Shola epitomizes what this league is about. Finding young players that probably want to have a professional career without the CPL existing. And obviously there's a lot that goes into it. The fact that he trained with the club. He even did a stint when I was there as well. And this is a young player that's still running at players. But the fact that he has the ability to go and train and to have these magical moments against Atletico Ottawa. By the way, Atletico Ottawa must hate this little guy because he just ends up scoring these big goals against them. But this is what this league is about. Shola epitomizes this. There's a lot of great stories, but Shola Jima has to be the best one because now after this season, I'm not saying this guy is going to end hunger in the world. He's a great player, but he still has a lot to prove. But he has that platform now, and now he can just add on to the season that he just had this past one in 2024.
Oliver Platt, we'll go to you next, and I'm remembering as we sort of hit the highlights or ran through them, I didn't even mention Brian Wright, who won Players Player of the Year and looked unstoppable for about 2/3 of the season before falling out of favor with the coach.
You could mention him. I'm going to go a different direction. I'm an elegance professional pundit. I liked the answer from what's your name? Jordan?
Which one? There's 3 of us.
Jordan, I like Jordan's answer, but it's not my answer. It's Benjamin Mora and the short sweet stint for the painter, as I like to call him. Look, give him credit. He revitalized this team in at a time when clearly they needed an impetus of something. He certainly brought it. He brought intensity. He brought passion. That was clear on the sidelines every game. He feuded with Carlos Gonzalez, which for me was one of the highlights of the entire season.
So
got that first playoff win. And then he was gone. And then he hit the roads as soon as he'd arrived. So it was just a very fun, short but sweet ride, I think, with Benjamin Mora in the York United dugout. That was the story of the season for me.
Okay, well, I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction as well. I'm going to give them a letter grade because that's what we do, and it's B plus because there was a lot of positives that started with the letter B. First of all, brothers,
love
the
alliteration
Pascal
on
brothers
this show.
taking ownership of the team were outstanding. And I think we got a taste of what we can expect going forward. I believe in that process. Benjamin Mora came in, it took the league by storm. York United, midway through the summer, or partway through the summer, was top of the table. He only lost once in his first 10 games, really set them in the right direction. Babouli and Brian, these 2 players were outstanding. Brian Wright, the goals dried up at the end of the year, but Mo Babouli, when he was playing, he's consistently one of the top players in the Canadian Premier League. And at the back, Abate and Stirring, when fit, were elite center backs in this league. Both went out through injury, and it completely changed the shape of the team and their prospects moving forward. If those 2 stayed healthy, I think that they could have legitimately contended down the stretch a little bit more than they actually did. So the team was a little bit thin, but I do think there is a bright future ahead for York United.
Did you just do
ownership of the
at the
Pascal?
back?
Hold on. No, you're
Beat that, boys. Beat
Yeah,
that, boys.
you
That's
win.
that's 6 Bs by my count in consecutive days where Gareth Wheeler is auditioning or poisoning
Brilliant.
himself for a job at Sesame Street when he's done
Yo,
with us at
mute
one.
your-
Bring
mute
it
your
on.
mic, Wheels.
Interesting, Gareth
Mute your
Wheeler,
mic.
that you mention in that wonderful bit of alliteration some names that are actually out of contract at the moment. And it's going to be interesting to see how this offseason unfolds. By my count, Batney, Babuli, of course, Boteo and Guzman have their loans ending. Ferrari, Marquez, Stirring, and Wright are all potentially going to walk, or they could be locked up and return for 2025. But that's, of course, what's got to be on the mind of their newly appointed general manager and his head coach, Mario Stacchio. Oliver Platt, what is your biggest offseason priority for this club?
Business to be done, you could say.
Another B.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. Great reaction from all of you there. I think it's
I
hard.
was more
It's hard to
surprised.
pick
That's
out.
why.
B flat reaction.
That you're keeping it going.
It's hard to pick out one real priority. I think when you've got so many players who are out of contracts, right? Like they could be looking at a lot of different changes. So that's just the interesting storyline with York for me, is that I think the opportunity to overhaul the squad in some ways could be not the worst thing in the world, because while they were a good team, I still think they were quite a way off the top teams next season. So there's a lot of flexibility there. But the other side of that coin is, like, we saw what happened to a team like Halifax this season, where they, I think, made or tried to make too many changes, and it kind of derailed the start of the season for them. And you've got a rookie manager coming in Mario Stacchio. Is he going to have to gel together an entirely new group? That, I think, is going to be interesting to watch. But, on the basis of the players who are out of contracts, there's going to be priorities all over the pitch.
Barrett Beeler, what do you believe?
Oh God, guys, get your own shtick here, man. Like that's my game. You guys can find your own. Look, I think the Pascal brothers showed that they're willing to dig into the Mexican market, which they're familiar with, to bring players, and they came with a little bit of a mixed bag this year. But if they can still draw back players to the GTA, keep that nucleus strong while adding the Mexican players on top, I think it's a compelling mix. I mean, unfortunately, the best Mexican player played down the road in Forge and Daniel Parra last season, but that doesn't mean that those types of stories cannot emerge through York United. I just think that overall with this project, it's more about the off field than on it. Like, crowds were a bit better this year. I thought the communications team did a really good job. I really enjoyed going up to games there, but the stadium's still just in a difficult location for me, and I'm not sure how that gets resolved. So I think keep on pushing things off the field, allow the on-field play under Eustachio to kind of be unleashed. I think on the field they're moving in the right direction as well. So I'm bullish on York United, both on and off the field here. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time.
I think I'm going to say two. One, I think the first priority has to be either re-sign or find someone similar, or find players similar to the player that had the most goal contributions ever in York United's history. And maybe I'm a bit snake bitten, because I know my time in the CPL would have been different if you have a couple of cold-blooded killers in front of goal. Brian Wright with 9 and 6, that just hasn't been done before for York United ever in history. So an attacking figure needs to be either re-signed, or they need to get one moving forward. I think in the back line as well, because as much as goals is a part of this game, and as much as you want to talk about a number 9 in this league, you live and die by the fact that you have center backs that will just put everything in front of shots. I know you have Leon, who just had a season in the CPL. That was good for me, but he's the only center back that is signed. So you're looking at a Botney, Stirring, like, are these guys coming back?
They'll be active. They'll be active in that area.
I mean,
Jordan,
don't
you think that
big thing?
Like, they're adding York United 2 into the equation next year to development? Like, where did Shola come from? He came from TFC Academy. And with all the change that's going on with that club, TFC are in a position where if you're a player looking for professional opportunity, you see Gmo, I think they're going to provide stiff competition now. So provide that option. I think the pipeline of young players across the Greater Toronto area will be the biggest and best way that they can continue to develop their club. And that will take time. In the meantime, I think they can find other players. I think they can find other
But do they want to go that route? That's $1 million question. Like, the players that you bring in, I understand with the CPL, it's a bit different than other leagues, because the 23 players that you bring in, you have to use. You don't have the safety net of signing new or young players. So selection is huge in the CPL. Who you bring in and how they're used is a vital piece.
Good young players.
Success.
Good young players for depth.
So that was highlighting the players who are out of contract, who have uncertain futures. With the group that remains, Oliver Platt, who's going to be the most important piece for 2025?
I think you can make a bigger picture argument about Shola, which Jordan has already covered, so I won't go to that one. In terms of immediately on the pitch, I think Juan Cordova had a very good season and has become one of the better midfield players in the CPL, coming in as a fullback and playing very well in the midfield role for Benjamin Mora. So he'd be my pick as someone who, is a good starting point to build around. And I give a shout to Elijah Adekubi, who had an excellent season as well.
Yeah. Jordan Wilson.
Why are you still in answers? Just stay with Cardona.
Sorry, I should have just
one.
Like, yeah, like you said, pick one. Ollie's like, oh, but I think Elijah as well. And then now I want to pick someone else. But Elijah was on my heart.
Give Elijah.
It's not because he killed the CPL awards with the rap as well. It's just because I love when players like play outside of themselves. He was exceptional this season, but specifically with Mario Stacchio and the fact that they have the Calvary connection, and I know how Mario's going to want to play. A guy like Elijah is going to be crucial to his system and the way that they build the attack. So a healthy Elijah is probably the most important. But yeah, I still think as well goals win games. So whoever's playing that 10 or 9 is going to be a vital piece.
Wheels.
Let's see who they can keep, because keeping Brian Wright, Mo Babuli, like these two players, they carry the mail for this team. So they'll go as far as they can take him. I like Cordova. I like Adekubi. Some other players that step up in this team, but with so many players out of contract, some big decisions need to be made. So, and that's what's vitally important, is keeping a little bit of continuity for Eustachio, because he is familiar with these players and he'll know who he trusts as well.
And that's the interesting thing right now with one of perhaps the most volatile rosters, just in terms of who we don't know their future of. So I guess the question is difficult, but that's my job, is to ask the difficult questions. I'm occasionally a journalist, Oliver Platt. What are your expectations for 2025 for this club? Do they progress? Do they regress? Or do they kind of stay where they're at?
I'm optimistic. Like, there could be a lot of change, but like I said, I don't necessarily think that's implicitly a bad thing. And you have to give the new owners credit. Like, since they came in, I think they've largely delivered on what they promised. So it's still very early days, and I there's more runway in front of them to continue to build. But I've been impressed so far. I think this club is in a much better place than it was a year ago. And on that basis, you hope that they keep making good decisions and keep growing in this league. Jordan Wilson, do you agree?
Yeah, I think their depth is probably a big issue. It was a big issue this season, but it's something that you give the Pasquale brothers some time to just get acclimated to Canadian football. But for me, it's about the 13th to like 18th player, right? Who you use coming off the bench. I think for them making a push and getting that first playoff win was huge for the club. I know that personally firsthand. But you have to make a run in playoffs now. That has to be it, right? Not just getting to the dance, but making sure that you try to play in the last game of the season. But it's about that depth. If they can get that depth and that chemistry, they can dream for sure.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult to project, because this is a league that started last season with the same 8 managers that finished it the season before. So you kind of knew what to expect, knew what the teams are going to be about. Mario Stacchio, this is his first time in charge. And Benjamin Moore did a great job, an outstanding job with this team. So I think they can be a little bit of an X factor. Would it surprise me if they maybe take a step back because of continuity elsewhere? Maybe. I think Halifax is going to take a step forward. We'll see who Atletico Ottawa hires, because they certainly have a squad that's capable of competing. So it's going to be tough. I expect them to be in the mix, but are they going to be the team on the outside looking in 2025? Perhaps yes. We'll have to see how it all plays out.
Jordan, the question on all supporters' minds: did Morrow text you? You were supposed to text him.
Yo, I cannot say what Mara and I spoke of and what we spoke about. Just know that I've been getting in shape. Maybe that's because I'm getting too big for my Blazers. Maybe that means
you're gonna do some.
I would have made you my X Factor player to watch.
Buddy, let me tell you something. I can't even do it to embarrass myself. If I do come back, even for training, I'm there. It's not like, oh, let me feel it. I'm there. Studs up, tackles, full in. I'm there.
Breaking news. Wow.
And that's why Jordan Wilson has not been invited, because they do not want Shola tibia to be snapped.
Shola.
Thanks for that, Jordan. Yeah, hey, boys, brilliant bit of broadcasting today. Proud of you all. Thanks for joining us on One Soccer today. We'll continue to go coast to coast in these 15 minutes